Hi, so today I wanted to share what happened when my parents received Jesus or Yeshua as their Lord, as their Savior, and if it made any difference in their lives. And so we all had our own journey in our search for God. I think I prayed to receive Jesus first in my family. And then my mom, um, she never really had a specific time that she could pinpoint that she really just prayed and, and said what we call a sinner's prayer. And so her journey was more gradual, I would say, but she has developed a hunger for the Bible. And little by little, she started walking with the Lord. It was very obvious. But with my dad, it was much more, I guess, dramatic, and in some way because he was the one who I think struggled more with his temper and with certain amount of anger and resentment as a young man. And this is what I was sharing in the beginning in one of my first videos when I said that my dad had a temper. Now, I want to make it very clear that both my dad and my mom were super, super loving parents. I think my childhood, when I think back of my childhood, I was a happy child because my parents were my best friends. They loved me to pieces. They did everything for me. We were very close, extremely close. I think I don't even really know of other people that I feel were as close as my parents were to me and I was to them. And yet there was that backdrop of a certain amount of just lack of peace and a lot of explosive arguments and yelling and words being said that were hurtful. And I mentioned that as a child, I often hid behind a chair and cried because of the amount of just that conflict that was there between my mom and my dad. And my mom told me, I remember once, that sometimes they would walk down the street and they would fight between them and argue. And she said it was so intense that I felt like the buildings are going to collapse on top of us. So it was that bad. And so with my dad, he started to read the Bible, but I think he went through a kind of a back and forth journey where he wasn't really sure, or maybe he was not very committed in his walk with God. I don't really know all the details, but I do know that he started reading the Bible in Italy. He started praying, and as we transitioned to Canada, which was at the end of August of 1988, he started going to church right away. We were going to church, and we were actually at the same time attending a Messianic congregation where there were Jewish people who believed that Jesus, Yeshua, is a Jewish Messiah, that he is not some kind of Gentile God, that Jesus is the fulfillment of Jewish prophecies. And so we were immersed in this kind of two a little bit different cultures. And I know that my father shared with me that at one point, maybe a year into our staying in Canada, he committed himself to God. And yes, I want to tell you that there were changes. Um, the amount of conflict between my parents just fizzled. I mean, it doesn't mean that they became saints and perfect. There were every now and then, some kind of little fights and arguments, but it was nothing like what I grew up with. Um, and yes, I think that this is the only reason that their marriage has survived, because almost every one of their friends that we knew, couples who immigrated at the same time with us or a little bit later, and when we got in touch with these people, almost all the marriages did not survive the stress of immigration. Many of their friends divorced. Um, Immigration is like a test, really, of what you're made of, because there is just so much stress, there is so much pressure, so many questions, and I think temptations as well. I know that in our surrounding there were many couples who have swapped, like literally, they divorced and they married the other person's partner and so on and so forth. It was almost the norm. And yet my parents' marriage, that was not that strong in the beginning years, it did survive. And I really um, feel that this is because of what God has done in their hearts. And I also want to share um, a kind of miracle that took place very shortly after we have arrived to Canada, because one of the things that did happen after we um, received God, received Jesus into our hearts, is that we saw miracles, real miracles. Like, maybe they were not world shattering miracles, but for us, they really were. And one of the things that happened that I will never forget was that as we went to the Messianic congregation, um, some of the people who were coming, they were kind of people who were interested, but they were not believers. In any case, to make long story short, one day, because the first year, as we have arrived to Canada, we were supported by the Jewish community. They were the ones who gave us the funds so that we can rent a place to live and have some food, because we came without English. I had a little bit of English. My parents had almost nothing. And it was very hard adaptation. There was really no internet in those days, so it was a very different kind of experience, and we really needed this help. And so one day my parents were called to the office. I believe it was Jaius, and their caseworker showed them a letter that was given to him. It was an anonymous letter. And the letter said that my family, Bogdan and Veronica Butenko, are attending a church. And I understand the person who was our caseworker obviously had a question about this because they were supporting Jewish immigration. And I understand that for the Jewish community, this created a problem. We never thought of it as we were doing something wrong because nobody has ever told us, if you come to Canada and if you're supported by the Jewish community, there are certain rules. Nobody ever told us we are not allowed to believe this or not that. Um, there was nothing like that. And so we were very, just we didn't have anything on our conscience. Yet there was this letter. And our caseworker told us that, asked my parents straight. He asked, "Are you attending a church?" And my parents said yes. It never occurred to them to hide this, to sneak, because this is something that happened in our hearts, that things that we did without thinking before, like cheating, if it wasn't something terribly big, it was okay. A little bit of lying wasn't the norm. Nobody lived like a perfect life. And, this was, if you need something and if you can get something, you add a little bit of lie here, a little bit of lie there. This is what people did back home, especially, where to survive, you often needed to cheat a little bit or steal a little bit, unfortunately, but that's often what happened. And yet, after we became Christians, it was a real change in our heart. It was not something somebody told us. We just could not. For the sake of finances, financial gain, or anything like that, we could not lie. And my parents didn't even think for a second when they were asked this question. They openly said, yes, we are going to church. Even though in the letter, for some reason, it said that we're going to Russian Orthodox Church, but the question was, are you going to church? And they said yes. And their caseworker told them, I'm sorry, but we cannot support you financially if you are attending a church. And so we were taken off support completely. And here we are, still very new in the country. And no money to pay the rent, and no money to buy food, nothing. And this is when the miracles began. We were so new in faith that it didn't even occur to us to ask for help. Anyone. We didn't say anything to anybody. We were going to church, but we never thought to say to somebody, oh, this is what's going on, we need help. No. And so God started taking care of us. Crazy things started happening. People would suddenly give us money out of the blue. People would show up at our doorstep with bags of food. Yesterday they were not doing this, but yet the day after this whole thing occurred with us being taken off the support of Jewish community, suddenly people are bringing food to our doorstep. Clothes. I remember going to church and somebody gave us a garbage bag full of really nice clothes, beautiful, and then even more strange things started happening. I remember there were all these skirts, I think, or dresses in the bag, and I just told Mom, I said, "Oh, but they don't have any belts." I wish we had a belt, or a couple of belts for these, because it was, I think, the fashion. Well, next Sunday when we were at church, somebody gave us a bag full of belts, just belts. And it was like that all the time. Then I believe what happened was that the government provided English courses for my parents to attend, and while they were attending, the government was paying them money. So it's like we transitioned from the support of the Jewish community to this government program, which helped us. But in that in between time, but everything just happened just at the right time. And everything that happened in between was pure miracles. Absolutely just incredible. And I remember it was so much so that I came to the point where I couldn't handle it. I remember feeling so overwhelmed with the sense of God's love and care, with this extravagant, lavish love of God that He was just pouring on us and pouring on us and pouring on us and giving to us things that we needed. There is a verse in the Bible that says, "Before you even call me, I will answer." And this is what was happening. Before we even prayed about something, before we even spoke a word about a need that we had, it was met supernaturally. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed. It was almost a sensation that I couldn't breathe. It was like, just imagine somebody like piling gifts at your doorstep. Imagine this pile of gifts, and it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. And you feel like there is so much love and so much care. And I remember praying and saying, "Lord, please stop. I can't take it anymore." It was really that overwhelming. And the funny part is that it did stop when I prayed that way. And then I thought, why? Why did I ask for that? But God continued taking care of us. It just, I would say, wasn't quite as dramatic as before I prayed that please stop prayer. And so yes, many other incredible things did take place. And I think I will share some of them with you in the next video. Thank you.